Hello there, this is a quick video message to try and raise awareness to the fact that my son has not been seen or heard from. This is for the past 7 years. This is my son Benjamin Fevang, who you can see on the screen here. Not been seen or heard from since 2014, when I last saw him at a restaurant in Bournemouth, when I shared a meal with his mother and stepfather. This photo was taken on that day in 2014 at the restaurant in Bournemouth, on the last occasion I saw my son ever again. And very clearly the people organising his abduction, his kidnapping and disappearance appeared to be his mother. This is Anita Fevang, who was also there that day in 2014, and his stepfather Ronny Johansen, who are basically very displeased that I have been busy collecting evidence. This is of offences committed by both Anita Fevang and her ex-partner. This is Dan Marshall. This is Dan Marshall, the chap that I met when I went and knocked on my son's front door in 2003, only to be confronted by my ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend. This is Dan Marshall, waving a brick at me, shouting, "I'm going to split your effing head open." And I have reconstructed the scene here by lifting a picture of Dan, this is Dan Marshall himself, dancing, and superimposing a brick in his hand to recreate actually a stunningly accurate scene, and the same image or situation I had to face in 2003 when I asked to see my son, only to be threatened, as I say, with this lunatic waving a brick around, shouting, "I'm going to split your head open." But obviously very keen that my son stopped seeing his father and had his father removed, which is effectively what has happened. And of course this then quickly resulted, unfortunately, in Anita committing perjury. This is Bournemouth Crown Family Court, in order to try and hide her boyfriend's offence, only committed a few days earlier, by lying, as I say, in the courtroom and trying to get me prosecuted for her boyfriend's offence and attack against me, which she almost succeeded in doing. Now, just to put this in some perspective very briefly, this is a timeline of my life. This is 1995, when I first developed all the symptoms of sinus cancer. 2003, when this brick murder attempt, some 8 years after my first signs of cancer, when this first brick murder attempt, behaving as the precursor to the next 11 years of physical assaults and abuses and murder attempts against me, not least of which was this one in 2012, committed by another guy called Asher Osmondson, who literally tried to beat me to death. And all this done while I was investigating this awful charity scam. This is after discovering the nature of the cancer I was suffering from. This is sinus cancer, blocking my left sinus cavity, resulting to this mild distortion to my face, you can see here, and loss of over half my teeth, sadly. It's mutilations to my mouth and face, and as I say, this has been an ongoing issue and encouraged many violent assailants to try and abuse and bully me in the meantime while I was investigating cures. And it was around this, just before 2012, I was subjected to this awful barbaric murder attempt by this other chap, that I suddenly discovered evidence of effective cures for cancer, not just sinus cancer, but every type of cancer, likely effective on a long list of other terminal illnesses as well. This is very briefly the alkaline diet, as championed by Dr. Robert Young from America, and herbal remedies as explained by Dr. Robert Mellamede, again from America. Now, as I say, this then alerted me to the fact that these treatments were ancient and very likely closer to 50,000 years old, in light of new evidence of ancient cities that was coming to light around the time of 2010, 2011, when I was investigating this. And as I say, this was all explained around the dinner table in the restaurant that day, in front of Ronny Johansen and Anita Fevang, who then, well, especially Ronny Johansen, who decided that he didn't like it, all this, and he also didn't like me collecting evidence of crimes that Anita Fevang had committed in England. This is Anita Fevang, sorry, there's a better one here. I summarised, all the evidence. I've carefully collected, evidence of all the abuses that she committed against me during her time in England, and the hostage taking that started in 2014. And say it was the red line is the cancer, the green line is the terrorist campaign that's been running since 2003 of physical assaults and murder attempts. 2014, this is the yellow line, signifies the escalation of this terror campaign into hostage taking, kidnapping and intensive suicide incitement. Now, as I say, all this is amounted to over the past 7 years is just intensive suicide incitement, so it might not come as any surprise that Anita Fevang herself very sadly encouraged her father to take his own life, or rather forced him to take his own life, when she was just a teenager. This is, I don't know if we can find her, here we are, Anita Fevang, who very clearly appeared to force her own father to take his own life when she was a teenager, and therefore been employing the same effective strategies that removed this person from her life, now onto myself and my son. This is, as I say, following this 7 years of intensive suicide incitement that started in 2014 with the abduction of my son, presumably to force him to take his own life in the same manner that her father was, and including myself, of course. So we now are looking at somebody who's very clearly guilty of serial suicide incitement, literally predisposed and a professional serial suicide inciter, clearly motivated by success that she had in the past. And this, as I say, has now reached ridiculous proportions, quite simply because every time I report this to the police, they seem to be aware of the fact that they made some serious mistakes back in 2003. This is concerning the perjury committed at Bournemouth Crown Family Court to protect Anita Fevang, and therefore not very keen to help me find out if my son is still alive or if he's okay, quite simply because they made some serious mistakes, unfortunately helping this chap, cover up his brick murder attempt, this guy here, and this awful woman, who's basically nothing more than a serial killer, sadly, just cover up evidence of her awful crimes and abuses. So yeah, given the police messed up there right at the beginning, we have had unfortunately no effort to now confront Anita Fevang later on, or Dan Marshall, who are very clearly key coordinators in this hostage taking and this campaign of suicide incitement against myself and my son. Obviously Dan Marshall, very keen to cover up evidence of his brick murder attempt, has now been very keen, working from the sidelines frantically to hold my son hostage. And this crime now comes with a mandatory life sentence. Hostage taking, I repeat, comes with a mandatory life sentence. Anita Fevang is also under the spotlight. So yes, the police unfortunately have been found again and again working in collusion with some rather obvious terrorists and very violent assailants, which again I've collected evidence of, and therefore pissed them off, unfortunately, simply because I've collected evidence of crimes committed against me. So Yeah, this is a very unfortunate state of affairs, and during my last phone call, Dorset Police were actually suggesting that I go to my MP or contact another police force in order to try and gain some justice in this ridiculous situation, which, as I say, has just spiraled out of control. And very clearly, unfortunately, it's all part and parcel of this awful cancer charity scam, which is, conducting all kinds of, horrific levels of crime within its parameters. Um, Terrorism, torture, kidnapping, hostage taking, serial murder, genocide, just to name but a few. Um, Lethal experimentation, suffocation, to name others. It just goes on and on. And yes, the fact that, of course, the police could be implicated, like so. Just to draw some attention to what's happening down here. I won't go, this is self-explanatory really. I think all you have to do is just, freeze the screen for a moment just to get an idea of what's happening there. It's all very straightforward, and yes, it does clearly explain why perhaps the police have been unable to help me and allowed this situation to escalate into the disastrous nightmare that it now is. So on that note, I will say goodbye. I'll just quickly flash up again these people that are guilty, who are the guilty parties here. This is Dan Marshall, Anita Fevang, of course, wanted for in connection with attempted murder by her boyfriend, committing perjury to help Dan Marshall avoid prosecution, in so doing causing GBH to our son via relentless terrorism, 7 years of hostage taking, threats and intimidation, driving her father to take his own life, a lifetime of serial suicide incitement. Gives you a little insight into her personality. This is her ex-boyfriend, lovely guy, attempted murder using a brick 2003, causing GBH to my son via relentless terrorism, lying to police, perverting the course of justice to avoid prosecution, co-conspirator in hostage taking for past 7 years. And then we have Anita's new boyfriend. This is kidnapping my son Benjamin Fevang, 2014, to conceal evidence of cancer charity fraud. This is the chap who was in the restaurant, rolling his eyes up, looking very displeased at my evidence I'd collected on corporate corruption at the highest levels. May have, it's under suspicion of the murder of my son Benjamin Fevang, who's not been seen for over 7 years. It's another thing actually that I forgot to mention, that the very fact I have not seen my son for 7 years raises now a serious concern that he's been murdered. And now we have evidence arriving that this chap may have links with the Norwegian mafia. So yes, it's all an escalating crisis of crime and of nightmarish proportions, which, as I say, has not been helped by the fact that the police seem to be implicated. And I'd therefore like to, just before I go, just come back to this and encourage anyone who has seen my son to contact me, to contact me preferably, if not Dorset Police, to pass on any information you may have, if it's to let me know that he's alive. As I say, at the moment we don't even know that he's alive. If you would like to carefully or subtly try and contact him, this is send him a friend request or message him, try and glean some information of the circumstances of the terrorism that I've just described. I mean, who's intimidating him, what sort of threats he's been subjected to, how long it's been going on for, how many people are ganging up on him, what nefarious intentions do they have. All these things I would like to shine some light on, if you possibly can. So yes, I'll just flash up some pictures before I go, and thank you for any information you can offer me in advance. Thank you for watching.